We are officially live on Vibe Osmosis.
Got it.
Well. Welcome to Vibe Osmosis. I guess the first of the spooky time. Like this, I started this thing like about a year ago, so it's really interesting on like the progression, I think, and especially or the lack of like content that I didn't put out that I've been sitting on. I was
Yeah.
I was just looking over some of these reviews and or like these interviews that I never still like put together, even though they were like so old, and like I even found some that like I was like totally forgot about. Like I was like, I really interviewed that person, like, and I didn't do anything with that. Like, what the fuck was I doing? That's, I guess, life, right?
Right.
All right, so if this is all working correctly, hopefully it is. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Zac Basket. I am a filmmaker and I make okay, decent shit on YouTube. So, stuff that isn't,
Content.
so that kind of content, that sort of, that good funny shit you'd see on TikTok and Instagram and all that kind of good stuff to get addicted to. 8 hours on your phone every day. That's what's up.
Or as they say on H3, cheers, my dude.
Yeah, there we go.
So one of the essential vibe osmosis questions I love to start off with is how old are you? Your astrology sign? Do you follow astrology? Let's break into that.
I am 23 years old. I am a Cancer. I don't think with my brain. I think with my heart. That's what I think with. And what was the third thing?
The astrology, like do you believe in it? Do you follow it?
Not really, but I know a lot of people that do, and I respect that. But you know, I don't know. I definitely think before I definitely speak before I think. So I think that being a Cancer, I identify with that. I can get down with, you know, being the crab symbol.
Right. I guess in that sign itself, the crab and it being close to, the ocean and water and stuff, do you like identify as like being, like preferred to, get wet or be by the ocean, or you enjoy swimming? Is that kind of like a thing?
I was very sad when I heard that Jimmy Buffett died, and I consider myself very much a parent head in many sorts of the fashion. So I feel like if when I'm 70 and dying of whatever disease microplastics would entail my death to be, I would love to die by the ocean with a margarita in my hand and maybe living on a boat. So I do enjoy the water and the ocean. So
I, all right, so
R.I.P. Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett didn't kill himself, even though he was on the Epstein list. Jimmy Buffett, you can look it up. It's true, but Jimmy Buffett didn't kill himself.
all right, so I mean, I've done the whole like van, like living in a van, living in your car, traveling, trying to do the whole like music, etc. thing. But I've really been interested in the whole boat life because you're able to go, coast to coast, travel, especially if you're like you just go down to Miami and then from Miami you could go basically anywhere to a certain extent if you have your passport, if you're a good American and that kind of stuff. But also, like, what I think it would be the most scariest aspect about this is like whenever you're the driver, now you're having to navigate the ocean, not like cars and streets and people. Like the stuff that you can control is literally mother nature that you have like no, you just have to like navigate and coast through it. And that I think that part is like that's the journey. That was what makes it interesting or different every time, I'm sure, than like people like touring, like and getting in the car and just going. And like, obviously they're gonna say like every city is a little bit different or have some similarities, but whenever you compare to like a person who's living their life on the boat, like that's whenever you're like everything is really different, or maybe my life is more chaotic or on the run or simple if you were really good at doing the boat life.
I
Do
guess.
you think
Yeah. I think living on a boat is stupid as shit. The reason why I feel like is because you're more cramped than living in a van.
yeah,
And not only that, but you're not even on solid land. You're at the liberty of God in
yeah,
that sort of situation. So, I feel like that
a
hey
rainy
man,
night.
that, man wasn't meant to live on the water. I feel like that's been proven time and time again by all the hurricanes we keep getting thrown at us. So I don't know. I think van life and boat life are stupid. Is just I don't know. Stay on land, you dumbass.
All right, so speaking of this theme or topic, there's so many movies out there that are like based off of survival instinct 101, getting trapped on
Yeah,
an island, having to go to an island and escape these scientists or doctors or whatever.
yeah.
What do you think about that? It speaks cinema. You know what I mean? Like what about that do you think drives people to like with the last thing that's really big is like White Lotus. Like you're going to a resort and all this, drama is happening, but what about that you think makes it good cinema?
I think it's all due to the characters. It's all due to the characters, the writing. Um, what is the central conflict? Between. I mean, when you're on an island, you even in modern times, a lot of sort of storylines and uh just what am I trying to say here? Like premises
Yeah.
of stories, like they can all be like solved with like a cell phone call and shit like that. Whereas like, if you literally have characters on a desert island, or if they're on, I don't know, a rock, or in outer space, just some bullshit like that. Like you give them you make your premise kind of foolproof to be like, okay, they have to solve their issues right here and now because they're stuck. They don't have any other ways of escape.
Yeah.
So I mean, it works out well. I mean, it's kind of like a easy sort of I don't know, uh bailout if you want to have a premise that, is pretty to be solved easily, I guess. I mean, that's the reason why like who done it uh like mysteries are great on things like boats and trains, and places where you can't really escape from them, so absolutely. That's the biggest thing that I feel like being trapped on an island sort of movies and TV shows kind of are able to get away with. And also just a kind of experimentation. I mean, I don't know if Lost is the best example, but because I think Lost kind of sucked, but I do think that them trying to go like all surreal and David Lynch with it towards the end, I like that, but they never really fully committed to it. So I thought it was kind of shitty.
Um, one of I mean, I recently just shared this and seen one of like my all-time favorites ever since ever was Alfred Hitchcock. And
Yeah.
now that I'm older and rewatching this for like now for different reasons. When I was younger, it was because, oh, my dad thought this movie was scary growing up. I need to check out the birds because, it has like all these different elements. And now that I'm like older, I'm able to kind of dissect on like what made that film back then so conveyable to the audience and like
Oh
why
yeah,
that
absolutely.
spoke.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
other than just like that was just the time period, like they say about like everything now was like Oh, it was just the time to pass. But one thing like I find about like Alfred Hitchcock, he can touch on these aspects of like what's fantasy, you know what I mean? Like what could be fantasy realm like.
Yeah.
But then also give you that twist of like the realism aspect of these characters and their development, like how that can you know what I mean, translate with you as far as like your own fears or like your own navigation of like with like you know with Psycho, it's like your
Mhm.
own navigation between like horror and like what is like the new American way of scary situations, you
Well,
know?
absolutely. Like, I feel like Hitchcock, was an absolute pioneer when it came to psychological horror and cinema and stuff like that. Especially,
Different
you know,
ways,
and,
dry ways too at
yeah,
times.
like before like the 20th century with like World War I and World War II, we had conflicts and shit like that, but a lot of our horror was due to like cryptids and like shit like that. Like, oh yeah, it's the main, you know, tree man. It's the tree man of Newport, Maine, or whatever the fuck. Like just like these weird, like made
Yeah.
up like folk tales that made no fucking sense. And I feel like because you know, people were watching movies in the 20th century, like in like the 30s, the 40s, 50s, 60s, and so on, into now. We're like, we've seen people getting blown up. We've seen people get poisoned. We've seen people, go through some really horrific kind of shit. And I feel like Hitchcock was like a true pioneer in terms of us, like beginnings of us exploring it. One of the things, I'm gonna talk about the Feet Man for a little bit. Tarantino.
Yeah.
One of the things that I liked what he told me, what he said, like on a podcast when he was talking about Hitchcock, was that Hitchcock was kind of held back a lot by the times of which he made movies, like during the 30s, 40s, and 50s, was because it was during the Hays Code era. So, like, but we were able to explore a lot of stuff like Rear Window and
Nice. Yeah.
of course, like there's Psycho, there's the Birds, stuff like that. Maybe the Birds is a good example because it's just fucking birds. But it does deal with I feel like grief and just like psychological trauma. A lot of his movies deal with traumatic sort of elements to them. So yeah, I absolutely know where can understand where the elements of horror, everything kind of like goes back in modern horror wise into Hitchcock. If you didn't have Hitchcock, you wouldn't have The Exorcist. You wouldn't have one of my favorite movies, Jacob's Ladder. Love that movie. You would not have, the kind of filmmakers with like David Lynch, like going as far as he does with psychological and surrealist sort of stuff. So yeah, like uh love him. Love Hitchcock. He's not one of my favorites, but he's definitely, like a pure, like elemental sort of tier. Like if you want to get into movies, even if you're not even like a horror person, like Hitchcock is just great for drama, thriller, South by Southwest. He was very good with just more so than just horror itself. He was just good with suspense. He was great with like very suspenseful uh eras of drama. A lot of this stuff comes from German, theater shit from like the 20s and 30s, like a lot of expressionist sort of stuff. So yeah, like love him to death.
Now, one thing that I really see like the correlation between well, in this case, like the way to make something iconic that travels throughout time, besides putting in like these important messages, and the film itself, um for example, like with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, fall like with Alfred Hitchcock doing Psycho and following like somewhat of a true story, but also giving it a twist that you know Americanizes it or gives you that like better breadth of like what's really going on.
Hmm.
And then you get this development later on in the 70s with you know Texas Chainsaw Massacre that still follows you know the Ed Gein story, and then you're also getting like the own twist about like what that would really be like in a house that's you know terrifying you don't want to be trapped in.
Well, then like you also like you have the building blocks for other like horror from across the ocean during that point. Like in '77, you had a house, which
Yeah,
that like changed the game absolutely for a horror. I mean, don't watch that movie on a date. I would recommend watching that movie on a date, but I absolutely absolutely love it. And also you have to owe the Italians a lot of praise for their forget the name of it. There's a name of that genre of it, but it's like
not the
Italian.
noir. Yeah, I'm. It's like noir, not the noir or
Yeah, it's just like novel, like a novel, like novel based,
ah.
like it's like very like pulpy, like vampiristic sort of like horror that came out from like '70s Italian movies. I have like a VHS somewhere that's called like it's I think it's called like Hatchet for a Honeymoon, and it's literally about a man who just marries women just so he could kill them with a hatchet, like just like a straight up just axe. Um, and yeah, like